This is Kim Feinberg on the 28th of June 1998 in Johannesburg, South Africa. Tape number 5. I am interviewing Mr. Willie Ungar. Willie, tell me from here, where did you go once you had found out about the death of your family?
When I find out, of course I was a few days in my town. I was trying to find some of my friends, and I find a few, who came back maybe a day earlier than me. Then they came back. Some came with their fathers, and I decided then to go back and stay with my father there in Matrosen. And we stayed there. They looked after him, the Americans, and the Americans afterwards said, look, he's all right. He had typhus, as I mentioned, and we came back home. He was already better. He was better. So we came home, and we were looking in the what's name to go into the factory, and we couldn't get in. It was locked, and in the meantime it was broken in. I remember we had to break locksmiths to open it. In the meantime we went every day to the joint to look people who came, because every day people used to come already back from the concentration camps, and we used to get food there. I used to go with him to eat there in the mornings, in the lunchtime, and in the evenings. And we went, and he went to the factory side of it. We didn't find everything was taken, but we find one safe which wasn't touched, but we didn't have the key. So I remember they had to bring somebody from another town, a specialist who could open safes. And we opened it, and we find still things inside in the safe. They couldn't take it. They couldn't take it, and we opened the business with my father, and some people from the old workers, they're all Jewish people working there, came back also. And slowly my father started I started also to work there. And we started with a few people and producing same type of jewelry, We find a few of the old machines which they didn't touch. And we started in the same place, where actually I went just now when I was in 97, end of 97 there. I showed the children the place where we had the factory, but it's completely different. And I remember also once we started to work already and producing it, and we had bars, and we had those days already. It wasn't the new, that's jewelry, everybody. So one night, I remember one morning we came, and we had a shutter, what are you calling them, that you can't see through. And one morning we came, we saw the whole shutter was open and the windows broken. So the Russian soldiers took a van, ordinary Russian military van, and they put, you had little hooks on the shutter, and they put a chain, and they made the noise, and took out everything and they broke in. But those days you didn't have insurance and nothing. So it wasn't pleasant times going back after the war in 45 there in our place.
Where were you staying at this time, Willie?
We were staying with my father in the same place where we stayed, but it was occupied by the Russians. It was 3 families. It was a Russian family, a Jewish family who occupied our place, and we received 1 room.
And was it the same way as you had left it before the war, with your furniture and everything?
No, it was stolen, it was taken. Some were there, you know, but we had only one room we had, and 1 bathroom, which was between 3 families.
And how did you feel coming back to that? That was your home, and now you had to share it.
It was bad. It was bad those days there. With the Russians, you know, the Russians occupied it after they gave it to the Ukrainians, and it was bad. Those days it was very, very bad. After the war, the Russian soldiers came back and with half legs and so on, and they were wild, and they were going against the population there because they were better. The Russian government didn't help them, and they came back from war. Everybody came back from war, you know, from all over, and they were pinching, they were taking watches away. That's what they say those days, davai. Don't know if you heard of this word. Just give. And how many Russian what's names used to collect? They were for watches in my town, because they concentrated coming back to this part of Czechoslovakia, which the Russians occupied, and they didn't know even how to wind the watch, and they used to go and taking to a watchmaker there, 6 watches. He said, "What is the trouble?" So one watchmaker didn't know what to say, you know, and he saw it's not winded, and that was pins. They took it away from the people. So it was he went into a Jewish watchmaker. It happened in our town, and he happened to be also Jewish, the soldier, and he went in. I mean, he was like any other soldier, but he was Jewish, also Russian, and he went and he didn't know what to say, the watchmaker. He saw that everything is all right. So he said, "Look, come tomorrow," but he said, "I want to know what's the trouble." So he told the watchmaker told him, the Lechudoidi will is missing. It's part of the Bible. So the Jewish soldier asked, and the Riklat Kalu will is there. So he didn't know it. It is a saying in the Hebrew. That means he mentioned, he didn't know what to say, the watchmaker. So he just gave a Hebrew name. And the other one understood it. You see? So that's what happened there with these Russians. They were just pinching left and right, and that wasn't good. We decided we had there the factory for a few days, a few years.
Willie, what was the reaction of your non-Jewish friends when you came back? Did they welcome you? What was the reaction and your reaction towards them not helping you going through everything before?
Practically, I didn't have contact with them. I didn't have much contact. They knew me there. They knew us as Ungar, the jeweler, because we were the only jewelers there. But we didn't have much contact. I was busy then working. My father was working. I remember one episode where my father It happened when he opened the factory. I was 15 then, and my father went to his part of Czechoslovakia to see if any survivors, when he was already feeling better. It was in end of 45, to see if anybody survived. And he was caught at the border because they wouldn't, Russians closed completely the border between this part of Czechoslovakia, which they occupied, and the other part of Czechoslovakia. So you couldn't move, you couldn't go, and he was caught, and he was sitting for a week or 2 weeks in jail there at the border, and I had to run the factory. Then I remember this, and they let him out with money. He had to pay money, and they let him out, and he never went back there. So it wasn't easy to move. We wanted to move from there, from this place, because it was occupied by the Russians, and the situation was bad. Everybody left, and we managed to get out also about 2 years later.
Where did you go, Ronnie?
We went to Karlovy Vary, to Karlsbad, to Czechoslovakia, because my father, I got still his passport, Czech passport. My father was a proper Czech. And he managed to arrange that we should go all back to the proper Czechoslovakia, and then we went to Karlovy Vary, to Karlsbad, and we were living there in Karlsbad. We had a shop there. We actually went now to see the shop, a jewelry shop, again, open. We received Karlovy Vary was by the German, when the Germans occupied it, it was a German part of was part of Germany. The Germans gave it back to Czechoslovakia, to the Germans. So when we arrived to Czechoslovakia, it was in 47, we got a flat there in Karlovy Vary. They took it away from the Germans ran away, and they gave it to the Jews. So we were in one block, they were all Jewish people, like refugees. It was already in 47.
And here, did you meet any anti-Semitism?
No, I met in Zimbabwe. I mean, and then Rhodesia, a lot of British police who were in the Palestine police. They sent them out to Rhodesia, and then there were a few there, here, there.
Willie, how long did you stay here for, running the shop? How long were you in this town for?
In Johannesburg?
No, in Czechoslovakia?
In Czechoslovakia.
Yes.
As I say, we left in 47 the Mukachevo, the old part where I went to, where I was born, where I was brought up, coming home there, and we didn't see a future there. So then we went over to the proper Czechoslovakia, and there I stayed until 48. But we were running all the time from the Russians, and the Russians were running after us. So the Russians in 40, we arrived 47, in beginning of 48, occupied all Czechoslovakia, the Russians. So I saw no future there. And then they said the Russians, then it started the war in Israel, in Palestine those days, against the Britishers. So the Russians said, if somebody who is 17, I was then 17, must register to the army. But if somebody wants to voluntary to go to Palestine and to fight the Britishers, can do it. So I decided to do it.
And your father?
My father stayed still behind, but he saw also no future anymore there because the Russians occupied Czechoslovakia. And I decided to go, and they took us, quite a big group of youngsters, took us for training for 6 months, 4 months, 6 months in Czechoslovakia, and we went off to Israel.
How did you feel leaving your father after going through so much with him?
It wasn't all right. My father got married, and I had a sister already. She was born also in Munkac. She got married in 46, whom I knew. I know my father and my mother I knew. They were also jewelers, so I knew her well. She survived the concentration camp. And I always called her mother. She looked after me, and she brought me up. And we had very good relationship also with my sister. She comes here, we go, or I go there, and so on. And they came, I went to the army, I went to Israel, and they came after me in 49, when the big emigration from Czechoslovakia, all the Jews already, because the Russians occupied it, and then when they came to Israel.
Now, once you had landed in Israel, what was the reaction to you being a Holocaust survivor?
You see, I had an advantage. I went straight to the army. I came in to the army, and there we met. I spoke already Hebrew then, because I went to the Hebrew gymnasium, there the school, and I met there a lot of newcomers, youngsters, and I was in the army there. The war was finished, and that was dissolved. I came as the Czech brigade. Actually, I've got a picture which I did now in Prague, where the Israeli government is thanking the Czech that they sent all the arms and the soldiers and all. I was between them. I came out as the Czech brigade, and after the war, I went into the Haganah. And I stayed there, and my father came out with my mother, my sister. She was a little girl, and we started working. I was